Okay, great.
Great. Thank you, Bodo. Hi, everyone. I'd like to tell you about a study that we've recently completed at AUT University at the Human Potential Centre. The study was a Health Research Council funded 12-week study looking at the effect of a whole food, sugar and starch restricted feasibility study in children looking at weight loss and a variety of other feasibility aspects. So we did the study in the Hawke's Bay. We had a sample from Napier, from Hastings and from Havelock North. We had 25 overweight children or families that came on board the study of the ages of 8 and 13 years old, and we had a mixed ethnicity in the sample. We looked at several feasibility aspects such as the acceptability of the foods, adherence, affordability of eating in a slightly different way, and we had the sample that was GP recruited. All the families attended a starter workshop where we showed them a purpose-built website where they had access to lots of recipes and lists and Q&A and tips and tricks to help them. We also gave them nice little lunch boxes and fridge magnets with different combos of lunchbox ideas to them. So it was a very well-supported study. It was a one-arm study. It was a feasibility, so there was no control group. So how do we do? So I just wanted to show you the efficacy of it. So we've got a change in weight and BMI and waist circumference, and you can see we did make some really nice changes in the children's anthropometry. So they dropped weight on average, dropped a couple of points in BMI. I do want to just make a point here that the overall meaning of the statistical application here is not super meaningful because there's no control group, but for the children that finished the study, we wanted to see how they did and what the overall magnitude of the effect was. So that's why we have applied a statistical significance and an effect size. So we showed some good outcomes there, and we also showed an increase in HDL cholesterol and a decreasing trend in triglycerides, which is pretty consistent with what you'd find in the literature with a reduction of sugar intake. The most interesting part of the study was looking at the outcomes from the focus group, so the actual feasibility outcomes. And when we looked at the parents and caregivers, there were four main themes that came through. Affordability, which we asked them in a focus group and also on an individual basis, so we had that privacy aspect as well. It was interesting, we got a really mixed bag with this one, and a lot of the caregivers said that while in some instances it was a little bit more expensive, to them it was worthwhile because they saw such great outcomes and some really good successes. Some of the other parents were buying expensive items like nuts and almond meal for baking, and these things we know they are that they can be expensive. Some other parents were complaining about the price of vegetables, which is interesting because any which way we guide children and families, it's always going to have an emphasis on vegetables. So the importance on educating on budgeting tips and shopping and season and vegetable gardening is all too important. Satiety was something that came through, so parents reported that their children were feeling a bit more full and were eating overall less. So because of the reduction in the processed foods and the refined carbohydrates, they were eating more protein-based foods and healthy fat-based foods, whole foods, which tended to improve their satiety. One thing that the parents did say was that organisation was a biggie, and when they weren't organised, everything went out the window. So again, like anything in life, you have to be well organised to make sure that you've got success both in the short term and in the long term. Of course, support was a massive one as well. So support initially from the team of researchers, but of course support of the immediate environment, like the school support and the family support, made an enormous difference as to who succeeded and who didn't succeed. I do want to talk a little bit about what the kids said. This is always the fun part. So these are actual transcripts, what the kids said And of course I've only chosen the, some of the good and some of the bad, not all of them, but just to get the overall message across. After a period of time, I didn't really like them referring to lollies or sweets. I thought they tasted yuck, so I stopped eating them, and then, just stopped. I think that's interesting because, again, a lot of people claim that when they come off sugar, their palate changes, so that might have been, something there. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard. It's a good comment. I completely found it easy, except that my brother was supposed to be doing it, but he didn't want to, so he ate donuts in my face. So you can see there are all levels of support, and this kid obviously didn't quite get the support that they needed. It was easy when you were with your family, but when you are at school, it is a lot more tempting, because all the other kids have packets of chips and biscuits. So when you go home from school, you feel like eating those. So not only is the environment not very supportive, but those thoughts obviously linger on. And when these kids get home, they still desire these types of foods. It was really cool because my brother's 18 and he makes all his friends that bring McDonald's to the house eat outside so I wouldn't see. And for someone to say that in a focus group, it obviously held quite a lot of meaning, and you can see obviously in some families people went out of their way to provide that support that is needed for, again, short and long-term success. I think if the rest of my family had eaten the same way, I reckon it would have been easier. Doing an intervention where you're targeting children is useless unless you target the whole family, and that was the idea. And we invited everyone to come in for their 4 weekly weigh-in and chat. Unfortunately, that's not quite how it panned out. It was typically the child and the caregiver. And of course, if you've got split families, which was quite common, that provides challenges as well. My friends supported me. One of them actually wishes she got picked to do it. Can't say I've heard that before about an intervention. And then finally, some of the real wins, or the comments that I thought were real wins. You see friends' lunches with lots of chippies and biscuits and all that stuff, then it makes you feel good that you are healthier, and it makes you feel a lot better eating that way as well. It also gives you a lot more energy too. Like, I find it easier to go for walks and biking now. And we had a few comments about how they used to feel sleepy and tired and unenthused about moving, and now they just felt a little bit better. The only part where I wanted to stop was in the first 2 weeks, because there's this kid in my class who made fun of my lunchbox. But when everyone else started trying to eat like me, he was the only one that was left out. So I think that's gold, and peer pressure can work for you and against you, and this is a great example of something that has worked for this child. And I think this is my absolute favourite. My daughter's teacher noticed she changed because she was bringing almonds. So the teacher used to have chocolate as treats, but she started bringing almonds for the kids. And I think that is a real win when you get the children changing the behaviour of the environment that they are in. There are lots of other comments that I could have put up here, but I've chosen the ones that show the best and the worst of some of these outcomes. I do want to say, in conclusion, that we did have a fairly large dropout, so we had about 48% dropout, almost half. That might sound like a lot, but it's actually in keeping with what you see out there in weight loss studies. And again, in conclusion, you're not going to change everyone's behaviour. Typically, in weight loss trials, you tend to see a third that pick up weight, believe it or not, a third that are neutral, and a third that reduce weight. So this is kind of in keeping with what we see in other trials using a low sugar, low refined carbohydrate approach. Parting comment is that we think that the study has shown some promise, and while we don't have a formal Shred That movement, we certainly have a little group of informal Shred That budding kids in the Hawke's Bay that will certainly, we hope will certainly be those advocates and take along the low sugar message to their friends and their school and their families. Thank you.